And I wanted to create something that aided entrepreneurs like myself to have like-minded families around them and to give them a little bit of the experiences you and I met at these different mastermind events. But I wanted something geared specifically to the family.
I think about the concept of the family board meeting as one of our saving graces. It's just making that time and committing to it. For us, what really turned things around was a commitment to go on 2 dates a night, or 2 dates a week, rather. That'd be a hell of a night. But
You're showing off now.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we're busy, never sleep.
One of the things that can make family life harder for you and I and our spouses and our children is if we put that pressure of the perfect family. I mean, I haven't met one yet.
No.
And it's not about perfection. It's about bridging imperfections and enjoying the time that we've got.
My good friend Joel Weldon says, Mike, you've got 18 summers together with your kids. That's it. Sure, they'll still be your kids, but after that, I'm telling you, it's different. You got to grab those 18 summers and really make the most of them. And boy, do they go by quickly. Now, if you've got kids, whether they're adult age or children, as parents, we're afraid of missing milestones and moments that matter, running out of games to cheer for, work stealing our most important moments with them, or being a stranger in our own home with our own children, or decoding our teens' silence. And today I'm here with my good friend Jim Shields. His whole life revolves around creating a legendary family life. Now, a couple of days ago, I buried my dad, and I honestly have no regrets. Now, I wish I could have had more time with him, but I don't have unfinished business or unspoken words. And I think I'm one of the rare ones, but I almost had some of the greatest regrets in my life about not connecting and missing out with my son, Zach, who just turned 21. And it's because of 18 Summers. It's an event that I reframe my entire relationship with Zach at. Now, 18 Summers is an experience and a book that can completely change the quality of the relationship you have with your children before those 18 summers are gone. So first of all, we're going to both say hi to you. Jim Shields, say hi.
Hey, everybody.
All right. So I think the bottom line is, remind me, how long ago did we meet?
It's 14 years ago.
Okay, 14. And I remember I told you this. So you invited me to attend 18 Summers. I brought Zach there, who at the time was 14, 15. And as I mentioned in the intro here, it completely changed my relationship with him. But, we started our relationship not on a business side, but purely family. That's one of the things I liked most about you. But before we get into this, why don't you just describe what drove you to start 18 Summers and write the book in the first place?
Yeah, we always start things out of needs for ourselves, right? And here I was, instant father. I now have 5 children, as you know, two biological, 3 adoptive. My oldest sons came into my life. Here I am getting them at 7 and 5. I had an instant family. And I wanted to start to leverage the stuff that you and I were getting in business groups, like Strategic Coach, right? We get there and we learn how to be great entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Where can we go to become great family men and also entrepreneurs? And I just wanted to fill that gap, not only for other people, but so I could learn. So this all started as an experiment. But we had a simple goal. I want to be successful in business and successful at home.
Yep.
I don't want to miss out on these years. I mean, I was already ticking behind the clock as far as I could see. And I wanted to create something that aided entrepreneurs like myself to have like-minded families around them and to give them a little bit of the experiences you and I met at these different mastermind events. But I wanted something geared specifically to the family.
Right. And what I remember, what was so powerful about it is there were, the people who were there, it's not kids, like 9 to 23 is the age range when we were looking at the information before we started rolling today. And what happened is there's little breakouts with kids, so they're just with kids, then there's parents, and we talk about things. And part of the thing that you're able to do is frame and get deep really fast, get vulnerable really quickly. I remember Zach created like a vision board for himself, which I couldn't have possibly have convinced him to do that, but there was something about the magic in the air and everything that just made this whole process possible. It's starting that conversation. And look, he's 21 right now. He's been in college. He's taking some time off to work. And we've struggled through everything imaginable, including the lockdown with him. We'll talk more about that in a moment. I mean, basically everything that any parent ever complains about and is like we've been through it or we're still going through it. And it's not easy to be a kid these days. It's not easy to be a young man. It's certainly not easy to be a young woman in today's culture. There's so many ways to be wrong, and there's so many distractions. And just getting your kids to put down the phone and get engaged is incredibly difficult. So, comments before I ask you a couple more questions, because I've got a message.
I mean, as you said, there's a list of things right now. And the good thing that we realized in doing this work for a dozen years, my wife and I now, is this isn't about perfection. One of the things that can make family life harder for you and I and our spouses and our children is if we put that pressure of the perfect family. I mean, I haven't met one yet.
No.
And it's not about perfection. It's about bridging imperfections and enjoying the time that we've got, because you've buried your dad. I've buried mine. Like, this is a surreal thing that entrepreneurs have in the back of their head and in the forefront at certain times. And we just want to know how to capture the moments. But it's never been about perfection. Yeah. And when you start to just at least let that go, that's when the real creativity and engagement and connection and adventure can start to happen.
Yeah, I think that was, when you say that, I remember it's the first one to be vulnerable as the hero in the room, and admit that things aren't perfect, and talk about whether your kid's involved in drugs, they're experimenting, or any number of things that you'd be like, that'll never happen to me, and your kids swore to you that'll never happen to them, or they never do it. And the fact of the matter is, the world's a complicated place, more complicated now than ever before. So I have another question, which is, initially you called this the family board meeting. Explain what the idea behind that is, because that's one of the things that really attracted me to going. It was the concept of 18 Summers, but also what the family board meeting was.
Yeah, the family board meeting was a simple rhythm that I created to make sure that I was treating my children and then my spouse like one of my most, thinking like an entrepreneur, because I am, so why change it, as my most important investor in my life, my most important key team member, my most important client. And the family board meeting was about having intentional time, rhythmically and systematically, with each member of my family. And that one strategy, which took an underground following, thanks to my friends at Strategic Coach, like Shannon Waller and them, just took an underground following and took off. And that rhythm now is used by over 300,000 families around the world. And that's what family board meetings was about, setting certain rhythms with your home life, your family, the same way we would in our business, but for that engagement at home. Because we all want to avoid being, that stranger, that roommate, that part-time disciplinarian, or just an ATM machine. That's a horrible feeling. And when we start to get into that feeling, and we're working so hard to provide and live out our entrepreneurial dreams, if you're missing that at home, you're going to feel guilty, depressed, and bitter. And you can't be at your best personally or professionally if you have that. So the family board meeting was a very simple strategy to try to combat that. Yeah.
And I think, I look at it, we've been married now, Vivian and me, this is our 22nd, moving into our 23rd year. And I'd say I know of 3 really specific instances where it was either over or almost over.
Yeah.
And I think about the concept of the family board meeting as one of our saving graces. It's just making that time and committing to it. For us, what really turned things around was a commitment to go on 2 dates a night, or 2 dates a week, rather. That'd be a hell of a night. But
we're showing off now.
I'll tell you what, we're busy, never sleep. But it was that commitment, and also the commitment on what we did with Zach, and also never being split. In other words, we're always on the same page. But I think about all the failures we've made too. So next one, speaking of that, parenting teenagers, that's usually when we hit our biggest complications. I think with Zach was around probably really, even 15 was still fairly easy, but 16, 17 he started exhibiting anxiety and a lot of body shame stuff. And we're like, God, you're a beautiful kid. Why did this happen? You're 6 foot, whatever. He's 6'5" now. We look at him and we're like, you can't convince your kid that they're beautiful if they don't feel beautiful inside. But I'm curious for you, if you look back at all of the 18 Summers experiences that you've done, or some of the best stories from the books, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen, like immediate changes, like a transformation, a genuine transformation?
Well, and you and I always say this from our friend Dan, transformation rarely takes place in isolation. It takes place in groups. So when you say, gosh, and you've given me great compliments, you set up this format. Honestly, the format would be almost useless without the people in the room. So when we're by ourselves parenting, Zach, just like all kids or my sons, they have a finely tuned bullshit detector. You have to say something that to them. And that's where you bring in the village. That's where you bring in the fun uncle approach, which we do for masterminds. And with the mastermind effect, what I saw so many times at events with Zach, so many other of our friends and their families that have come and their children.
Well, we can name drop a little bit here. David Bach, Steve Sims,
you know, lots of different people from
Shannon Waller,
Shannon
Strategic
Waller,
Coach,
her husband, their whole family's been. When here it is, the fun uncle, fun aunt. Now
we call him the Funkle.
The Funkle, yes, the Funkle. If I say something to my sons, and we have a good relationship, you know, same as you and Zach, they will take it with a grain of salt and a little hesitation.
Right.
Because they know I'm there for their whole back.
The yes, but.
But if you, with your quirky, crazy, jokey Minnesota accent says something and it'll penetrate. They'll hear it.
Yeah.
And that is half of the key. Because sometimes when we're talking to our kid, like I've seen it with Zach, you'll be saying something with the best intention, but look, any way you look at it, there's still that hierarchy. And at that age, we don't want hierarchy. We want independence. You know, we want our own legs to stand on. So when it's coming from dad or mom with the best intentions, I, as a fun uncle to Zach, might be able to say the same thing with a little different angle, and it penetrates. It plants. It starts to fester and grow. And I've seen so many people, look, remember, the reason I started these retreats, there was some selfish reason. I wanted people like you around my sons because I knew they wouldn't listen necessarily everything I said, and you would probably share the same core values and start to impart them to them, and they're going to hear it even better, with even more open ears and open arms, which is what we want at that tougher age to get through. So half of my secret, Mike, is getting around other like-minded families so you can impart wisdom to my children. It's easier for them to hear. You know, because I can't tell you how many times one of my sons would come back and say something like, "Oh, did you hear what he said? Like I really can get with that."
Yeah,
and I'm
son,
like,
I've been telling you that your whole life.
I've said that 17 times. What the hell are you talking about, right? So,
totally.
But it takes a village, and that's half of this difficult. That isolation, especially in the teen years. But if you can get them out of their normal environment, out of their basic peers, and into a crazy room of all crazy entrepreneurs, so they all feel like-minded, and they can take the mask off, we've just seen some incredible things. And being able to track kids now, like Zach and others, you know, Steve Sims and Henry and I are still to watch what started there is just incredible.
Yeah. So I have two big questions that I realized I had. So again, I would say, first of all, why don't you describe what the experience is? So let's pretend I've made the commitment. I'm going to go to this thing because I got hooked somehow. And the two-part question is, what is the last straw or the call to adventure that get people hooked and they say, I've got to do this? Like, what would people say the reason why they did this is because we always say, because I remember when you invited me at least 3 times and I couldn't make my calendar work.
Yeah.
It was, I don't have time. It was never about the money. Because frankly, I told you right from the start, it was too cheap. It was way too cheap. It still is. It's such a good deal. And the other part was I had a hard time just imagining that I'd walk away with enough impact. And it wasn't about justifying the time. Like I really wanted it, but I was like, even selling him into it, you know, like my kid, we jokingly called him Eeyore. Like he just saying, I don't want to do it. Like getting him enrolled in anything that involved adults or something that represented personal growth. Like how do you sell a kid into that?
Yeah.
But again, I want to know like what the breaking point and the deciding points have been when you think about your attendees over the years.
Yeah, and it is very, very common for teens not to want to come. Because I think they have this false impression once people know me, and I'm sure friends of ours that are listening are like, this isn't like it's not a kumbaya event. It's not.
No.
It's a family mastermind. And what they think it's going to be something really uncomfortable. You don't ever want to say, hey, we're going to an event, how I can be a better parent to you. It's like, oh gosh, stab me with a dull spoon now. This is about a sense of adventure. And we're gonna in a fun way, you know, learn some important lessons not taught in school together, and you're going to meet some of my friends. And that's the way I always phrase it, where people are like, hey, would you talk to my teen? And they're like, all right, this guy's okay. The thing that got guys like you and I, for me to start doing the retreats.
And moms. This isn't just a dude's
No,
adventure, too. I think that's important. This is like boys and girls and moms or dads. And it's generally a parent and a child. So this is a bonding.
Yeah, and sometimes more family members want to come. We do when more family members come, we do separate parts to strengthen whole.
Yeah.
For a lot of people that know our one-to-one principle, you gotta the time with Viv and you is important. The time with you and Zach important. The time with Viv and Zach important. That's what I've seen the best strengthening. So
I
our
completely agree that knowing that you did that and you actually at the time discouraged. And I don't remember if I told this, but I was in a bad space at the time, and we wouldn't have had the breakthroughs we had, and it would have been toggling between mom and dad and Zach just wouldn't have worked. And again, I won't say that for everyone, but I know that's the case
for you.
Me.
Yeah. And so that's where you want to be honest. And the thing that you said, what gets people over the line? Well, you got tired of trying to do it on your own.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lack of care, there wasn't a lack of want. But there's a busyness, and there's not a format in the surrounding support to really make the breakthroughs. And you got tired of trying to do it on your own. And we all start to hear the Cat's Cradle song. We all start to hear it. I mean, Zach, the first time I asked you, think about this. This is crazy. The first time I asked you to come, and you and I had a great relationship. It wasn't, again, the want was there. The first time I asked you, Zach was up to the middle of your arm. By the time I got you, he was about up to your forehead. He was a tall kid at a young age, you know? And you feel that. And those years don't come back. It was David Bach who actually taught me, he said, Jim, the years are not all created equal. And that stuck with me. And I think that's why people start to come, because they're going, okay, look, school provides a certain amount. But all of us entrepreneurs especially, we went to alternative sources. That's how you and I became friends, made some of our best business contacts, and saying, maybe this is different. This is a way that might be able to accelerate. I mean, I can think... my first mentoring group I ever went to with Keith Cunningham. We were talking about it for Tony Robbins. I spent 3 days in a room with Keith when he first started, just 10 of us. I learned more in those 3 days than I did in 4 years of college, for me. So I say to people, what can happen with a format that's proven? And the thing that I'm most proud about for me and Jamie, like you, Mike, I've gone to everything. I've always, once I got out of college, I tried to learn more about my personal development, my financial intelligence, relationship skills. And I've tried to find the best of the best, melt it down, simplify the sciences, and put into a 3-day adventure for families. That's all I've tried to do. And I think once people hear about that, they see it, they're like, you know what? It's time to get on a plane and do something as a family. Not just focused as my business priority. This is for business people who want to make family the priority for this specific event.
Yeah, I love that. I think as I listen to you, there's this little quote that we thought about as we were preparing for this, and that is, if your son or daughter comes up to you and asks you about, like, what's your favorite adventure, and you stumble, and, like what I see often are, especially men who stop having friends, like deep friendships.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. I know a lot of people whose dads just go home and they just have to stop doing everything because they're just constantly beat up. And, that to me is pathetic and sad. And it has to do with having a compelling future. And for our kids to have a compelling future, especially in a complicated world that is buried in stress and constant interruptions and notifications and failed promises, some of the worst things happen because of that. So for you to have a compelling future, for yourself and your kid having one, and then a compelling one together, that was a big takeaway that I felt is important. And then also for your kid to not really know what you stand for. And even recently, Zach was with me like literally 2 weeks ago, and he said something along the lines, I never knew until recently, how much we have in common. But after I did my dad's eulogy, which was days ago now, he walked up to me and just said, I didn't know that you felt that way. And I'm like, God, he's missed these signals and these signs, and it takes these intense emotional events. And what I think about 18 Summers is you're compressing those, you're drawing them out of both sides experientially. So it was a long-winded way of getting to that destination. But Any comments before I ask you the last big question I have for you?
Yeah, I think when people say, well, what bridges the gap? What gets us to a more engaged level? Our goal is really simple. In a fun, experiential, adventurous way, following the mastermind format, we try to uncover the gifts and talents of your children and yours, because our kids still might not realize what yours really are. We just glaze over it. And we're going to learn the important lessons not taught in school together. And that is just a key component. And what I've learned, well, why have you and I become friends? Well, we're in some pretty deep conversations, deep learning, deep work. Imagine doing that alongside your children. You can't go home from an event and explain what you went through. You have to, but if you experience it together, totally different proving ground, totally different result. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn side by side with my children. And this gives you a focused chance to do it, again, with a good crowd around you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think time compression is a really good reason why, which now the next part, I could do my version, but I want to hear your version. So let's say someone says, I'm all in. I want to create a deeper, lasting connection relationship, something that could seriously mark as being one of the most important moments in yours and your child's life, a relationship, but also creating memories, lasting, permanent memories that have massive impact. Plus a high probability that you're going to meet someone who's going to become a lifelong friend, because part of what you do is the curation process is incredible. But just describe, let's say I raise my hand, I go, okay, I'm in, I'm going to do this thing. I show up, what happens? Like, what's the general curriculum? Let's give us basically an overview of what's the experience like, and what do you walk in with, what happens, and then what do you walk out with?
Yeah, great question. So again, this is not content heavy. You know my saying that today the world is choking on content and starving for execution. So I want to go deep into some core things that are really going to settle, take hold, and you're going to be able to go home and really put into action right away while you're still there. So the three things that we've really found out have a lasting effect are personal development, financial intelligence, and relationship skills. And most parents say, I want to have that deeper, more meaningful relationship with my children. So we start by going into the relationship skills in a fun, very interactive way. If you remember, our connection formula is one of the most powerful exercises people say. And they say that one thing changed the relationship with our children. And once we have a little bit of that laughter going, and once we have some realization, once kids realize how much their parents actually appreciate them, and you know, through the things we go through, then we're able to talk about some bigger things. You know, a lot of kids still don't understand why we work hard for the money. And it's not just for the money and the thing that you can put on your wrist or park in your driveway. It's about other impact things. And once kids start to realize that, because at a young age, how do you really engage kids with money? Well, there's some ways that we've found to do that. So we want to make sure financial intelligence is grown. And there's also a greater respect. One of the things that all entrepreneurs, when we interviewed over 1,000 entrepreneurs to start these retreats, Mike, they said, I want my kids to appreciate what they have. You know, we've worked hard for that. Most of us entrepreneurs are first generation wealth. And how do we get our kids to really have that same work ethic and also that same appreciation where it's not just blown? Well, as you know, with our money exercises, that's another thing. So we're going to go deep into that. And then I want to get clear on gifts and talents. Now, my favorite thing, again, I can remember being up in front of that room with Zach. We have a really good strategy for what does it look like in 20 years. And the exercise, I take the kids for a half a day. And you were floored. But that clarity has still stuck with your son, my sons, so many other daughters. And that's when we get clarity.
Because they can't think a day from now or a week from now or a month from now, but thinking 20 years from now is
But to give them that one chance to lift their head above just all the basics and to see that horizon. Now, looking back, you know, starting these 12 years ago, the kids that come back to me, they're in their mid-20s now, some 30 years old going, that was my North Star. That gave me a realization of what are my unique abilities, how do I put them to use, what's possible, and how can my parents support me, and vice versa. You know, it's really nice to know for our children to have our backs and that we have theirs. So, and then there's always my service and contribution, which you know is my last day. Again, parents said to me when I interviewed, it was 99%, Mike, it was incredible. What's your biggest concern? Mike, everyone else, what's your big? Well, I want my kids to appreciate what they have, right?
Yep.
So service and contribution is one of our most active things. Our charity house build that we participate in down in Costa Rica is a very, very emotional and impactful moment because how do our children realize what they have? Well, they have to get into the trenches and they have to see certain things in action, service, contribution. This gives them the chance to reflect and go, wow, I never realized something so simple as my toilet, my running water, the roof I have, the air conditioning is such a given, but not for everyone. And it also inspires them to see, wow, my parents actually do really good things with their money. That it's not just about them, that they do care about me and many other people. So it's a very powerful moment. So at the end of these 3 days, you're going to walk away with a real clear understanding of the 18 Summers strategy. It's all about having a more engaged family life, how to have continual support with other people in your network and with each of your children moving forward. And how do you keep learning those lessons I talked about? Because think about it for a minute. How much time in the busyness, when we're busy and our children are busy fulfilling the other parts of school, how much time do they really have to focus on their own personal development, on their own financial intelligence, on their own relationship skills? Because, Mike, it doesn't matter if you're the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker down the road. If your kids don't have those 3 skills, they are limiting the chance of them having a successful life personally and professionally.
Lot to unpack there. Well, here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to say this to everyone watching. That's you. I look at this and I think, like, I don't know who told me this the first time, Jim, but it was like, if you think about it, the most important and valuable things we're ever going to do is create lasting memories.
Yeah.
And creating lasting memories with our family, our kids especially, and what they think about you and what they know about you, but also giving them those skills, those life skills. And that includes a mindset that they're going to carry with them and that compelling future. But it all comes down to experiences. We invest in experiences. That's really what our greatest investments, our greatest memories are going to be made up of those. And when you can open your heart with your kid and watch their hearts get open and laugh together, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah.
And coaches need coaches. And, it's almost impossible to be a hero in your own hometown. It's even harder to be a hero in your own family.
Yeah.
And I think this is a way to genuinely be a hero. And no matter how uncrackable you think your kid might be, this is a unbelievable way to get there.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to just say for you watching right now, to learn more, there's a link in this video. You can go to retreat.18summers.com, and that's the number 18summers.com. So it's retreat.18summers.com. There you can get information on the dates, the time of the upcoming event. It's coming up very soon. And one of the things that Jim is doing is he's limiting the number of people there, because the fact of the matter is, if it gets too big, it loses its intimacy. And you've already heard me talk about how important and valuable this is, but also coming home, my wife saw a very, very different Zach enter the room. She saw a very different Mike enter the room with a newfound level of commitment. So if you want to feel recommitted, or if you feel like you're missing out, there's some gap there, this is, in my opinion, the most effective way I've seen and experienced personally to make that happen. So again, I'm going to pass this on to you for any final words before we finish up, Jim.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on it before. There's always a reason why not to come to this. But what I learned for myself, and this was a big step back lesson, I was very quick, for good reason, because I wanted to provide and protect and give the kids that I didn't have, my kids what I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I'm very quick to jump on a plane to go to an event or something that's going to help grow the business, meet a client. But I was slow to do something like this for my family. And so I know that experience where there's never a perfect time. There's just not going to be.
Nope.
To start a business, to take the time out to be with your family like this. But I've never had, in all the years that we've done that, a family go, man, I wish I hadn't taken that time off to come down to this experience. Never once. Yeah. And I think it's just knowing that the clock's ticking. And that's not a threat. That's just, unfortunately, a fact that you and I have started to live through. You know, I'm halfway through with half my kids now. And we all need a little bit of rejuvenation. And I think that being able to have this adventure together is just such a reset and just a refilling of the tank.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about. I want to see that for all people, because I've been in that position where you're strung down, overtired, and you feel like your family sees you as a stranger, or you're not really getting to your kids. And it doesn't have to be that way.
You're right. You're right. So I'll wrap this up by saying this simple thing, which is this could very well be the most important investment you'll ever make in yourself, your child, and your family. And this is the best time to do it right now. So Jim, thank you, my friend, and let's say goodbye. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Head on over to retreat.18summers.com. Sign up. Bye.